Hey, Mikey, I've got a joke for you, and this is a good one this time. I promise. In fact, I would say it's a thinking person's joke.
Okay, carry on.
So, a mushroom walks into a bar and orders a drink. The bartender says, "I can't serve you." The mushroom says, "Why not? I'm a fungi." See, I actually got her to laugh. Okay, I got another one.
That one's good.
I got another one. A jumper cable walks into a bar. The barman says, "I'll serve you, but don't start anything."
Ba-dunch.
Hey there, everybody. Mr. Robin here. How the hell are you? Welcome to Mr. Robin's Hood. We're coming to you digitally from the compound just outside of Fargo, Oklahoma. I'm here with my trusty partner in crime, creative collaborator, and current best pal, Mikel Robinson, known throughout the podcasting uni as Mikey-on-the-Mic.
Okay, stop right there, Mr. Robin. This is the third episode of this podcast that you've used the term current, and I'm using quotes here, current best pal for me.
Yes, that's right. Best pals are like existential crises. They come and they go.
What the hell?
And that is our motto here at Mr. Robin's Hood, by the way. We are your existential crisis, or as it's translated to Latin by the Google to tuis sumus discrimine esse. So today's episode is entitled Mikey's Mixology 101. And I have with me here in the studio, Mikey, the premier bartender in Northwest Oklahoma.
Or as you guys know me here in the podcast uni, Mikey-on-the-Mic.
That's right. So I'm going to just briefly run through a little history of mixology that I found in a couple of places on the internet. And one of the things I discovered, I remember a couple of years ago, I got a copy of True West magazine. And they were talking about how the scenes that you normally see in those old Western movies where, a guy'd come into the saloon and he would be, he'd go up to the bar and he'd kind of lean over and he'd say, "Shot of whiskey, shot of rye," whatever. Well, it turns out that by the late 1890s, that was considered really low class. Because mixed drinks had become a very popular thing in places like Denver and San Francisco and back east. And so it was considered more couth, if you will, to have a mixed drink rather than just straight up shots of whiskey and rye or tequila or mezcal or whatever. And so I started digging a little deeper as we were getting ready for this particular episode. And one of the things I discovered was that mixed drinks really didn't come around until just after the Civil War. So that ended in 1865, and there was an influx of people who had experience as bartenders in places like, France and England and other places in Europe. And these people started mixing these drinks and it kind of caught on. So by the time you get to the late 1890s, nobody wants just shots of whiskey anymore. They want mixed drinks. And that's where our pal Mikey-on-the-Mic comes in, because she is the most requested bartender in Northwest Oklahoma. People turn to her because she has turned mixology into a fine art.
Are you mocking me?
I am not.
It sounds a little mocky, but
I'm building you up. Don't fuck this up.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, I guess that would be true. I'm trying to be humble and modest about it because, there are people here in Northwest Oklahoma that I definitely consider my equals in that realm. I just happen to be able to kind of get myself and my foot in the door at some pretty premier places that kind of have me on the top of their vendor list. So I'm able to get in on some swanky stuff, so to speak.
Well, yeah. And beyond that, I think it's probably a lot of that is also your personality.
Well, yeah.
But
I'm easy to get along with. That makes a big difference.
Until you really piss her off and she 86s you out of the bar, and then you're done.
Yeah. Well, that's the redhead in me. Oh, you push the right button and I fire off, so to speak.
So let's talk a little bit about mixology as an art form. Mikey, why don't you tell us exactly how you came to become the world's greatest premier bartender in Northwest Oklahoma?
Well, it actually started in Oklahoma. I think I've talked about I grew up.
Things do.
Right. Well, I was born in Oklahoma, so yes. But I was raised in Kansas. You open the door for that. But I was raised in Kansas, which is funny in Kansas, mostly 20 miles from the Oklahoma border anyhow. But I went to college and I was actually working at Taco Mayo. And weirdest thing, I've never been fired from any place, but I got fired from there. And I didn't absolutely know what I was going to do.
Wait a second. What did you do to get fired from Taco Mayo?
Well, it's a funny story. I broke the rules. So anyhow.
Oh, that so does not surprise me.
Yeah. Well, and they were it wasn't anything extreme. So I was a shift leader and we had some strict rules about jewelry, right? And you couldn't wear jewelry. It can fall out of your face and into the food and whatever. It was in the handbook. Anything in the handbook that you don't do right is grounds for being written up in termination. And we also had this other rule that you can't sit on the cooler. Well, I had some women that, standing on their feet was a bit hard. And so I'm empathetic to that. And so I had been wearing these plastic bracelets that I never took off. I mean, I showered with them, and a couple of them were hemp that I had braided. And my boss, the owner, he'd got on the camera and saw me with these bracelets, and one of those gals sitting on the cooler, and he sent the GM to fire me. So I was to be made an example of.
Wow.
Right? And so she comes up there. She's upset. She didn't want to do it. And she fired me, and I had just turned 21. And so I was like, well, my other friend that I had worked with at Taco Mayo, she was a little bit older than me. She'd already left, and she was working at this bar, which was like literally just like two establishments. Well, like here was Taco Mayo, then there's Pizza Hut, and then this bar. And she was like, oh, well, we need some help down there. So I'll go talk to the owner. So I go down there and I talk to him, and he hires me. And so there I am starting my career as a bartender, mixologist in a little tiny bar called Cowboys, which is not there anymore. This is in Alva, Oklahoma. And now it's turned into the Angry Bull. They turned that into a liquor store. And then they built a facility and called it the Angry Bull. And the guy who owned the Cowboys, he ended up selling out and going back to Florida. But I started out there, and it was just something that I was just kind of instantly I wasn't just good at it, but I'm a people person. I'd been in the service industry. When I was 14, I started working at a restaurant, and I was waiting tables. And as a lot of people know, if you've waited tables and you've bartended, there's a lot of similarities in the way that you approach your job, in a sense, when you're serving people. Hey, what do you want to drink? Well, do you have this? And sometimes when you're ordering food and they have a certain dish, you have questions about it. You want to know a little bit more about it maybe before you order it if it's your first time.
Sure.
So that happens in the drink industry as well. And so I started learning from just the people around me. I mean, I was looking online for things. And then there was also some regulars that had come in that, maybe you've never been a bartender, but if you've been somebody who frequents a bar, you kind of get to know there's lingo, there's, different kinds of, a plethora of different kind of alcohols. And so some of these people, even though they hadn't done it, they were giving me pointers just from being people that indulged in a good mixed drink. And so I spent 2 years working there and really, really blossomed. And then when I moved over to Woodward and I started working at the radio station, there was a little stint where I wasn't actively, bartending, but I was still mixing drinks at home and things like that. That's always something I've always still done. But then I ended up going to work at the Woodward Elks Lodge and managing that, and having the space and time and resources to really kind of grow there. And I did that for 5 years. And then, I took a little bit of time off, but even in between those times and to now, I've always kind of privately booked myself out and got myself on the line at these different venues as
like weddings.
Weddings, quinceañeras. I've done probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 quinceañeras at this point.
Oh, cool.
And sometimes there've been birthday parties I've done, Christmas parties. I've done several Christmas parties at businesses and stuff like that. And then most recently, when I took the job at the museum, I started, and I was at this point I'm getting a little bit more private stuff, So, but I had the guy that owns the Patriot Pub, reach out to me about helping him get the pub open, or the Pat.
Right.
The Pat open. And so I kind of did
known as the Pat.
The Pat. And so I did some consulting for him, and then was like, hey, I'd love to continue on with this endeavor and bartend, and I could use the extra cash, and so that's kind of the journey. So I started bartending in 2010 at 21, and I'm now 34, and I've probably maybe taken a whole 2 years total off from completely doing anything out in the public. Because I worked at Roosters for a little bit as well too, before I got my job at the radio station. So yeah, it's just something that I'm good at and I enjoy it, because to talk about one of the reasons I enjoy is the art form thing.
Yeah, right. It's hitting that perfect mix of alcohol and whatever else goes into the the
mixers. Well, and it's also can be a process, just like cooking. I mean, I refer to it like that because cooking and baking are a little bit different, and baking is a very much more of a science, and that you have to follow these exact instructions. And yes, cooking is also a science, but it's a little more loose, and that's kind of how mixology is. It's a little bit more of a loose science, but it's an art form in that science, if that makes sense. So a little bit too much of this or a little bit too much of that can really ruin a drink. And so portion sizes, they don't have to be exact like in baking, but there has to be a good ratio of all of the ingredients to really make a drink that somebody can enjoy. Just like we enjoy all of those indulgences when it comes to food and drink and other forms as well.
You obviously have an extensive background in doing this sort of thing. And I'm kind of interested, do you get a lot of, well, maybe not a lot, but okay, do you get pushback from some patrons who would swear that you mix that incorrectly, or how does that?
You know, I mean, there have been the times now. It's more of like they told me Sprite instead of Coke, and I was busy and did something like that.
Yeah.
But in my beginning, when I was learning, because I didn't really get any official training, I was learn as you go. Whenever I was helping with the Patriot Pub getting open, I knew the value in having the knowledge and having the training to go in and be successful. And so I said, with the people that come in that don't have any experience, I want to train them and pass that on. I'm very much somebody who, yes, I know that my time and knowledge and everything is worth something. And, you know, I do request compensation more now than I ever have. That's always been something that's hard for me for that. But at the same time, I have this knowledge and I want to pass it on. And when somebody shows me that they have the skills and the want to and the passion and desire, I'm going to be there to carry them through, however that looks like, and support them in that. So I spent time with some of our new bartenders to be able to train them on, you know, the lingo and things like that, because I wanted them to be successful and not have some of the humiliations that I had in the beginning, not knowing anything. And that's just part of it. But it definitely made me who I am today as your, you know, mixologist or bartender, however you want to refer to me as. And mixology is an exciting discipline that combines an appreciation of classic cocktails and cocktail culture. So I say bartending, but I definitely consider myself more of a mixologist because I definitely do practice in the culture and classic cocktails and making you a good drink. And the beautiful thing, just like in cooking with bartending, is you can make one drink 15 different ways and it's still a good drink, you know? And so you'll find bartenders who are mixologists, however we want to really refer to that. They've come up with their own concoctions, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit that, mix it all. And that is part of that process. And that's where I come back to the creativity part. It being an art form is they're creating this piece of art. It's not just visual art, but it's art to the palate. You know, when you drink it, it brings you joy, you know, just like looking at a painting or reading a book or a poem or listening to music. It's something that can bring you joy. So they say a mixologist refers to someone who studies the history of mixed drinks, which we touched on, and has a rich appreciation of the ingredients and the techniques used, and regularly creates new and innovative drinks. So that's the actual, we'd say the definition of a mixologist is. And there are definitely techniques. It's just like, I keep referring back to cooking because it's completely like that for me. You know, you throw a little bit of this, a little bit of that, you give it a taste, it needs something else, you know.
Okay. So in the James Bond movies, he always wanted a martini. I think it was shaken, never stirred.
Yep.
What's the difference?
Well, when you shake a drink, you're mixing it to another level. Like when you stir something, you're not really I'm going to say infuse. You're infusing it. When you shake something, you're bringing in extra oxygen and you're infusing those flavors together. I mean, you're really getting, it's like you put ice in it when you shake it and it does water it down, but also like some people like their martinis bruised. Well, bruised means that you have shaken it to a point where there's little ice crystals.
Okay.
You know, and that brings a texture to it, you know, when you have a little bit of, but yeah, there, and that's what I also, when I say techniques, that's what I mean. There are different ways to get to the final product, whether it's, you know, shaken or stirred. the different, even putting in the ingredients at a different time. We have at the Patriot Pub, I designed the visual sign we have, but I even came up with our signature lunch boxes.
Oh, right.
And so I spent probably 3 weeks on this, thinking of, different concoctions. So if nobody knows what a lunchbox is, right? It is a shot of amaretto. It is half Coors Light and half orange juice. So this was actually invented by a lady named Edna out of Oklahoma City. And if you've ever been to Edna's, you know what I'm talking about. She originally designed this as a shot. So it's like a little kind of smaller mug where it's half Coors Light, half orange juice, and then there's the shot of amaretto. You drop the shot in there, and then you chug it. And the way we decided to go with it at the Patriot Pub was that it could be either or, that you could have it as the shot and chug it, or you could have it as a drink. So we took our 16-ounce mugs and we pour the shot in there, and then we decided to do Miller Lite because the owner's last name is Miller, right? And the orange juice after. And so you can just chug that, like you'd chug on a beer. You can chug one of our lunch boxes, or you can drink it if you'd like, because it is also good just as a drink. All that stuff is chilled, so it's a chilled drink. But when I was designing these signature lunch boxes that we were going to carry, I kind of as a play off of what Edna did, but it's cool because it came from Oklahoma, so we're just kind of carrying that on. I was thinking about these lunch boxes as what would taste good, for your palate, and not so much aesthetically pleasing to the eye. And there's one called the red, white, and blue box that I did that whenever we started making it, it kind of looks like throw up. Like it mixes together and it looks disgusting. And so I was like, okay, with my knowledge of the different alcohols, because alcohol has different densities. You can take butter shots and Baileys and you can split it up if you use a spoon and slowly pour in all that fun stuff. So I was like, there's got to be a way to at least make this look like red, white, and bluish, or have that look to it, although it's more like red, white, and yellow. But the white's the yellow, or the yellow's the white, or however you want to put that. But
you hope the patron is colorblind.
Well, or just gets the concept, all right, what we're trying to go with here.
Okay.
And so I'm like thinking, and so I'm okay, I know how to do this. So you've got to put the amaretto and the vodka in first, right? Because this one they all have the standard 3 things. Well, mostly. There's a couple that I took the orange juice out and did pineapple and, kind of, but you know what I'm saying there, right? So you put the vodka and the amaretto in first. Then you fill it up with the half of your beer, in this case Miller Lite, and then the orange juice. Then you put the blue curacao in. It drops down to, well, it doesn't actually, let's see, it stays kind of at the top. And then you drop the grenadine, which is the red, and it falls down. So then it's like blue, yellow, and red.
It's
so
like an abstract painting.
A little bit.
Yeah.
And for that first instance, it looks good for a second, and then it starts getting weird. But at least you get that look. So that's the only one that's kind of like, the rest of them, they don't look bad, so to speak. But I named them all things that kind of go along with the theme that he was going with the Patriot Pub. So we've got the Freedom box and the Spirit box. And, well, we had to have the Passion box because you got to have something like that, right? And we had like the 1776 box, the Patriot box. So we've got, I think it's about 10 of those lunch boxes, those signature lunch boxes that we do. The most popular ones are probably the spirit box, the freedom box, and the passion box as far as what those go. So if you haven't tried those, come on down, because Mixology Mikey came up with those.
Go to the pad.
Go to the pad. So anyhow, so that's kind of speaking a little bit still on the art form of it, because that's as an artist, that's something that's really a big part of my enjoyment in that what I do in mixing drinks. So you want to know some of my favorites?
Sure.
Right? So and I love garnishes. I love to use garnishes. I think they add an extra kind of flair to the look of it, but also the flavor of it. So to me, it's really encompasses the art that you're trying to produce in the specific drink. So for instance, like one of my favorite things to do is an old fashioned. And if I could cut the oranges fancy, I would. I do it at home, but down there not so much. But having like a big block of ice for those is really pretty ideal in the look, but more the flavor, because it doesn't. You're already shaking that, so it is kind of watering it down to an extent. But like a chunk of ice, it you can kind of sip on it still, and it doesn't get watered down to the point where it doesn't taste good anymore, so to speak. But my favorite's to use rye whiskey. I think it's better with rye. I mean, there's people that like it with Maker's Mark, and I mean, you can use any kind of whiskey, but I think the rye whiskeys are the best. The one we go to down there is Bullet, if you're familiar with Bullet rye.
Yep.
So the other thing is bitters. So if you're not familiar with bitters, it's how I explain it. It's like an essential oil for mixologists, right? That you add to a drink. And so you don't need a little bit goes a really long ways. And that's where some people kind of get off with it, is they may put too much bitters in it. It's, in my world, 3-4 dashes at the most. Whenever somebody orders one, and this is the one drink that's like, do you know what you're doing? Because if you don't, it's a total wreck. It's a mess. I'm like, I know what I'm doing. And I'll ask them, do you like it sweeter, or do you like it with a bit more bitters? Give it that little edge. Mostly people go with the sweet side. So that's why, stress the not putting a lot of bitters. But it does pull the drink together, just like the dude would say, this rug really brings the room together. The bitters really brings a old-fashioned together. And ideally, I like to use sugar cubes. But if you don't have that, simple syrup also works. You have to have that sweetener. And then you garnish it with orange and cherries, maraschino cherries. And you want to throw the orange and the cherries in there and let it, make friends. And then you can sip on it. It's a wonderful drink.
I have to admit, I've not, as I've grown older, I tend to not order mixed drinks as much as I did when I was younger. But one of my favorites of all time is the Hurricane.
Oh, yeah. That's a good drink.
God, I love that. And I actually bought Hurricane Mix and tried to do it here at the house with some rum, and it was just awful.
Well, and that's the thing about mixes. I'm pretty careful about mixes because there are some where it's just really not the same. And there are some that aren't bad. Like, I'll get away with buying Master of Mixes is one of my favorite brands that makes mixes. And they have a mojito mix that's really good. Well, you can make, a mojito from scratch. You know what I mean? But if you want a shortcut, you can get the mojito mix, and it's not bad. Any of the margarita mixes are pretty top tier. But you can also do that from scratch. But like drinks like the Hurricane that call for like the natural juices, like with, I think Hurricane has like orange juice in it.
Yeah.
it just isn't the same. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like those ones with like margaritas kind of limey and your mojito's minty. Those ones you can kind of get away because it's more of like an infusion. And then like whiskey sour and sweet and sour, kind of the same scenario there. But yeah, there are some where those mixers, you want to do it from scratch. You want to get the things to just do it from scratch.
So and you don't do it full time.
No.
As a bartender mixologist. I'm kind of interested though, is there a particular book of cocktails that you recommend?
No,
Okay.
I don't. I have several. Like the one you got me was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That had some different. But the thing I would just say is, if you're at a thrift store, maybe at a bookstore or whatever, and you see a book of cocktails, and it speaks to you, grab it. Because none of them are created equal.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have any specific one. I do pull a lot of stuff from the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I go to Pinterest a lot, but I couldn't even tell you a certain site. There is one guy, the Tipsy Bartender, if anybody's watched him, that I do enjoy watching his videos, and I have done some of his drinks, and they are top tier. Mm-hmm. So as far as actually giving you like one actual source, that's the only one that I actually have kind of continually sought out and followed. I might be like, I'm going to see what the Tipsy Bartender does. And
I know that you have made your own videos.
Yes, I have.
And put them up on TikTok.
Yep.
And I have heard people tell me that those are the best, and they are. I've
had people
you not only make the drink during the video, you're like entertaining while you do it. They're just incredible.
Well, thank you. I started those when I was working at the Elks Lodge, as just, well, one, because people would always ask me, how do you make this drink? How do you make this drink? And so I was like, well, if I make a TikTok about it, I'll just be like, go watch my TikTok, And so I started making those, and I haven't been consistent with them. There are some plans to kind of start back up doing some of those, because they really don't take a whole lot of time, and I've got a lot of the drinks in my head, and that kind of stuff's just a little bit easy for me. I don't know. I don't have to practice. There's been a couple times where it's like take maybe 4, but for the most part, I just whip it out like I would whip it out if I'm doing it right there in front of you, except I'm just adding how to do it into it, so to speak. Because to kind of go into a role of a mixologist, we're there to make you a good drink, but we also are there to provide a good atmosphere and company and be pleasant, because you don't want to go somewhere and you walk in the door and the bartender's like, what do you want today?
I've been in those places.
Yeah. And like, there are times when people walk in and I want to say, what do you want today? And I'm like, hey, how are you? But
yeah,
I'm not excited about it. That's just part of it. But as a role and to, make that establishment a wonderful place to be, you have to just be personable and happy and that people, unfortunately, and I hate to even put this in this, but they do turn to alcohol as a coping mechanism. And sometimes they're coming in there because they've had a bad day. And a couple drinks may just boost their mood. And some people can keep it at a couple drinks and some people can't. And that is what it is. But if they come in there and you have a smile on your face,
you've already improved.
You've already made their day better. And then, we're made to have human connections, and you find those in a bar. And unfortunately, alcohol drops your inhibitions and all that fun stuff. So people sometimes find deeper connections at places like that because they've become vulnerable. you know. And I laugh because I tell people we're not just bartenders, we're therapists,
Well,
you know,
and I
because
was
people
gonna ask
do.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, they do kind of unload
Mhm.
those things as you. And so another role as a mixologist, bartender, is you listen and you keep your mouth shut. You know, that's they're there because they're finding some sort of solace in, you know, being there. And you don't take advantage of that. Don't take
Yeah.
advantage of them telling you those things. Just listen and smile and
So
give them a drink.
do you secretly write down the crap you hear? And
Not always. I have written some things down, but I do know a lot of things about a lot of people in the years that I've born. I will never, I will take it to my grave. Well, that they just needed somebody to listen.
Sure. Right.
And I was there to listen because I had to be there. And sometimes I sit here and I wish I didn't know that. But I do. So here we are.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's just kind of part of it, you know.
Sure.
But I've made a lot of good friends and, you know, met a lot of people that have helped push me forward in my creative endeavors outside of being a mixologist and my career and everything. It's been good for me.
Good.
More than just in a creative sense.
Okay.
So if you haven't checked out my TikTok, because we were talking about that.
Oh, right.
I want to let you know that you can find it by going to the handle, I guess you'd say, is at Mikel Maureé Art, which is actually MIKELMAUREEART. So you type that in to TikTok and it'll take you to my page. I've got 3 of my bartending ones actually pinned at the top, and they're scattered in between my other ridiculously fun TikToks that I do. They're scattered in there, and they'll be easy to pick up by the I guess the picture that you see. You can watch them there, and then if you have a drink that you'd like me to do, please drop a comment in there. Or shoot me an email. The URL's at the bottom of the page or whatever.
Yeah, actually, we're now banned from adding anything to the bottom of the page of the podcast. But you can reach out to Mikey at Mikey, MIKEY, at MrRobinsHood.com. And please send any complaints directly to her because I get enough crap over the.
Well, if you want to talk to him,
blog.
it's Mr. Robin at MrRobinsHood.com.
Yeah, don't screw this up. It's mr.robin at MrRobinsHood.com.
Okay.
So send your hate mail to me. I'm tough. I can take it. I get this stuff all the time.
He has thick skin.
I do. Seeing that you brought up rye whiskey. For years, all I ever had was, anything with Jack Daniels.
Old JD. You and old JD.
Yeah, and I've tried over the years, they've done variations. So they went to Gentleman Jack, and I was drinking that for a while. And then I got kind of burned on that and went back to Jack Daniels, just black label. And but recently, in the past couple of years, I tried rye whiskey, and I'm really fond of that. It's got a little bit more flavor, I think.
Yeah, it's a bit more flavorful.
Yeah, and I admittedly, generally with whiskeys, it's over ice, and I don't keep a lot of it in.
Yeah,
the house.
so whiskey on the rocks is how you would order that.
Yes.
Like I was talking about the lingo.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Drop that in there.
And that's how I generally order it if we go out to dinner or something, but I'm always very specific. It's either going to be Jack Daniels or just rye, whatever they have. So I'm hoping that at some point, probably not right now, but at some point in the future, I can get you to make me a hurricane.
Yeah.
That I really love hurricane
Yeah.
because I used to sort of shack up with a girl who was who lived in New Orleans, and I was in Pensacola at the time in the Navy,
Yeah.
and I would drive from Pensacola to New Orleans. As I recall, it was about a 3-hour drive. I was in a '62 Chevy Bel Air that had no tread on the tires, and the it every time I could make it further with the gas in the tank than I could with the oil in the crankcase. So I was constantly having to stop, like, I don't know, it was like every 50 miles, I think, to put another quart of oil in this thing. But when you're 19 years old and there's a woman somewhere down the road,
3 hours away.
you will take whatever risks are necessary to get there. And that's kind of where I sort of fell in love with hurricanes, because obviously there's Pat O'Brien's, right in the heart of the French Quarter. And unfortunately, with the young woman, her name was Marie, things didn't work out. But I still have a love for hurricanes.
That didn't kill your love of hurricanes.
It did not kill my love of hurricanes.
That's wonderful. So, I'm talking about all these drinks, but I haven't told you my favorites.
Oh,
I feel like that may be something that the listenerhood, that's what we're going to call them, the listenerhood of Mr. Robbins Hood. Please be listening, because I'm about to tell you some serious stuff. So Sammy. So, well, one of my all-time favorite drinks is a White Russian. I love a White Russian. And then you just add a little Coke and it becomes a Colorado Bulldog. And then it's also a even more spectacular drink, although I'm more partial to the White Russian. One of my favorites, and I'm going to just digress a little bit. We didn't really talk about beer a lot, but there is a whole art form to pouring a beer and doing all that too. So there's more to that, but IPAs are my favorite. One of my other most favorite drinks is just a very traditional drink, but Cape Cod, which is vodka, cranberry, and lime. I mean, that is such an amazing drink. I also am very, very much a fan of Sex on the Beaches. Now, everybody makes them different. So what I say, my Sex on the Beach is vodka, peach schnapps, and Malibu, and equal parts of pineapple, orange juice, and cranberry. You put the cranberry on top so it can cascade down. But it's just a explosion of flavors. It's like every starburst thrown into a drink. Kind of.
Okay, let me ask this. So years ago, I used to spend a lot of time in Mexico, the northern Baja. And Chinese restaurants were everywhere in that
Are you talking about sake?
No. Oh, although I am fond of
sake.
But
sake, I don't know.
But you'd go into these Chinese restaurants in northern Mexico, and the drink that everybody ordered to start, it was like one of those tall, sort of thin glasses.
A highball.
No, this was more like a Tom Collins kind of glass. Okay. And you would order sangria.
Oh.
But it would there would be a clear liquid at the bottom, and then the sangria was on top and would float until they'd give you a big straw to kind of stir it up. Yeah. Have you ever done anything with that?
So I've made sangrias. I'm trying to think of what the white liquid would be. I almost feel like maybe because what you can do with a sangria is you can add liquor to it. Like there's a recipe that's like a pineapple peach sangria or something, and it calls for like peach schnapps and I think it's a flavored vodka, pineapple vodka maybe, or something like that. But then you have your wine in there, your white wine in there as well, and your fruit. So I'm wondering if that white liquid was some sort of liquor that they put in the bottom.
All I know is after a couple of them.
So there was liquor in it. Yeah, I mean, because sangria is normally just a wine kind of mixture with the fruit, and sometimes I mean like mixture. Sometimes it's like people throw in maybe like Sprite or some sort of other juice in there, but then you can add liquor to it as well and kind of make it a little bit stouter.
Okay.
Like a stout sangria.
Stout sangria. Yeah, I think the worst sangria drink I ever had was in New Jersey. And it was just awful. And I don't know. I'm probably too picky, but it would come out in a glass. And the sangria was in there, and which is a great thing. But they would drop chunks of fruit down inside. Yeah, it actually came out in a pitcher, and then you had to pour that from the pitcher. It was just awful.
Oh, that's too bad. I hate to hear that. Let's talk about something else that's really good.
What's that?
A michelada. That's one of my other favorite things, or what you could say a red beer, so to speak.
Okay.
So I have a michelada mix that I do. That's kind of a knockoff of a popular restaurant in town. I don't want to name any names, but I kind of figured out what they were doing a little bit and changed it to my own. And I'm not going to give you the recipe on here, but I mix this, and it's my homemade michelada mix. You can do like Zing Zang or spicy V8 or whatever you want to do. Add your Tabasco if you wanted Tabasco or any other kind of hot sauce, and then the spices or whatever. But that with a Dos Equis, which is one of my favorite, but it can be done with any beer, and then doing what we call slopping, getting the lime guts on the inside of the mug, and then shaking some more of the spices and some margarita salt, and then putting your michelada mix in and pouring the beer. Like that is one of my most favorite things in the whole world. I mean, I love tomatoes like you wouldn't believe. So anything that has tomatoes in it, I'm on board. I'm there for it.
So there you go, everybody. You got to head down to the Patriot Pub in downtown Woodward, also known as the Pat. Mikey is there 3 or 4 nights a week, probably, slinging cocktails. And if you're lucky enough, she'll probably mix something up for you.
Exactly, and you can book me as well as somebody
as a private bartender.
Yeah. You can. I have a page on Facebook, which is everything that I do is Mikel Maureé Art. So you can find me on Facebook. You can message me. I have a website, mikelmaureart.com, that you can also shoot me an email if you have questions about that. But that's just one piece of the creative bubble that I'm in, just like Mr. Robin here. And we have some other things working as well. So we thought before we sign out today, before we leave you today, we'd kind of, if you're interested in the other creative things that we do, we want to encourage you to check them out. And I'm going to let Robin talk about his stuff.
Okay, so I've got a novel that will be published soon in paperback form. And this is actually a book that I wrote and digitally published back in 2015 on Amazon, and it was well received then. And I had intended to turn that into a serial, and kind of had an idea for the second follow-on book, and I just put it off because there were a lot of life kinds of things that came along. And I recently, back in the summer, I think, kind of dusted off that first novel and updated some of the technology in it and added some extra sort of parts to it. And I think I've made a much better book. And so that'll be rolling out probably probably by the end of February. I'll have that, and I'll be on here trying to promote it and get it sold. And it's a sort of mystery. There's a little bit of crime drama in there. There's a lot of humor because that's just the space I come out of.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy the first one, I guarantee you'll love the second one, which is I'm already working on, and it's coming on its heels. So I've kind of picked myself up and dusted myself off, and I'm moving forward to do as much as I can before I drop off the face of this earth. And then Mikey and myself, we have co-written a book called Tales of the Plains Indians and Pioneers Museum. It's a curated collection of the posts. There I go, talking blog. It's a curated collection of the posts that we do on the museum's Facebook page on a nearly daily basis, and these span the course of about 6 years, I think. And we published that in December. And for a while, they were just flying off the shelves. And that slowed down a little bit, and we're starting to see it pick up again. And if you're interested in the copy, you can either go on Amazon.com, put in either my name or Mikel's name as a search, and it'll come up.
Yep.
And it's Tales of the Plains Indians and Pioneers Museum. If you buy it on Amazon, hey, that's great. The museum gets a lesser cut of that, and it won't be autographed. If you come into the museum or even call the museum at 580-256-6136, we'll autograph the thing for you. They'll mail it to you if you're outside of the area. Or you come into the museum and you can just walk out with this thing. And I have to say, we have written a script. We're going to start doing kind of just a very sort of brief commercial, if you will. We took one of the posts that was kind of entertaining. It's about a mother who's trying to protect the virtue of her daughter from a lecherous doctor. And we're going to shoot kind of a short silent film that kind of acts that out as a way of trying to keep the interest and alive in this book. And I have to say that with that particular one, all of the money that you would put into buying that, which is still, I think it's less than $20.
Yeah, it's $19.99 after tax. We do have to charge tax.
Yeah.
After that, it's like 21 something or something like that. So it's very, very affordable for what it is. I mean, it's 300 pages. Plus. There's a lot of great content in there, and part of our idea to kind of bring one alive was that we can sit here and we can talk about what's in there. And if you follow the Facebook page, you kind of have an idea. But if you haven't, we won't, and maybe you're new to it, we want to try to draw you in and show you what lies in those pages.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think sometimes we don't always catch on just listening to what's happening. Visually seeing something kind of helps spark that. And so we thought doing that would help in marketing it to people and getting them interested in purchasing this.
And I kind of left out the context in all this. These are old newspaper articles from the late 1890s through probably the early 1900s. And some of those were just hysterical.
So these are true stories.
They are true stories. At least as much as the newspaper.
The newspaper printed it. So it's true. It's like, don't believe everything you see on Facebook, but don't believe everything you hear in the newspaper in the early, 1900s. Whatever.
Right. And we've every bit of money that we make off these goes to the museum's operating funds. So, you're buying a book that is entertaining and informative, and you're contributing to the overall mission of the museum in Woodward.
And we really appreciate it. I mean, Robin and I, Robin more than me, though, spent a lot of time, putting this together and being able to bring this to the community. And, your support is very much appreciated. And, anything we can do to bring money into that museum, it's a spectacular museum. If you haven't visited it, you need to. And the thing about it is, money makes the world go round, and we can do bigger and better things if we can bring in some more revenue. And that's kind of the goal that I have for the museum as I see it in the future, and the support from Robin and holding space to help with that goal, and his contributions and connection to it, because he has a very long history with his family being in this area, and very much has some of that in the museum. So,
Yep.
Good stuff.
All right, let's wrap this up and get the hell out of here.
Let's do it.
It's time to eat. So as we go out, I'll just remind everyone to stay hungry, stay foolish, most of all,
Stay weird.